Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Thirsty Thursday live stream. So, hopefully, everyone's having a beautiful week, beautiful day. Happy Thursday. And tonight, we're going to be talking about an awesome topic that I really enjoy, DFIR, and different kinds of segues maybe into the field of DFIR. And if you guys aren't familiar with it, we'll learn a few things today from our guest. So, I'm going to bring him in now and have him introduce himself. And here we go. Hey, what's up, Jay?
Hello. Hey, Pat. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, I'm going to be here.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm super stoked to talk about our conversation and our topic for tonight. It's going to be about DFIR, digital forensics and incident response. So, so before we actually get into the show and all that good stuff, who are you? What are you up to? What, tickles your pickle in the cyber room?
Okay, I'll try to be quick because I tend to talk too much. So please stop me there. Hi, everyone. I'm Giorgio Perticone. I'm from Italy. I work in the DFIR, or at least that's what I usually say, just to be very quick. So I like to be the kind of, let's say, computer investigator when it comes to cyber incidents and data breaches. I do a lot of side projects, community projects. The most recent one, the most important right now, it's a little podcast of mine that I do, where I actually had Pat as well. One of my previous episodes. It's called Security Break. So check it out on YouTube and Spotify and whatever if you want. And yeah, pretty much that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro. So, if we talk about DFIR, so I guess the first thing I can ask, what exactly is DFIR for those folks that aren't familiar with it? What is it?
So I think you mentioned it, right? It means literally, digital forensics and incident response. It's a sort of umbrella terminology, if you ask me, because, it's something that I feel like professionals are calling it that way, but at the same time, not a lot of companies are calling it that way. Mostly those are, and we spoke about this, offline, mainly two different fields: digital forensics, incident response. Basically, and most of the time, it's incident response for everything related to cyber incident, or about some sort of computer hack or something. Where digital forensics is and was something more about any kind of crime that also involves some kind of computer device, smartphone, IoT, or whatever. The point is that you usually have a single term for both of them, because the competencies, the skill set that you need to build in order to do them is kind of similar. There are a lot of differences. We can talk about that maybe later, but that's why we kind of call it both of them in a single term.
Cool. Yeah, because I remember for an example, when I did my what is this? Computer Hack and Forensic Investigators, CHFI from EC Council. It was more about digital devices like hard drives or phones or, stuff like that. Even back then it was tapes. When you get into like Iron Mountain, I did my CHFI 13 years ago now, I think 12 years ago. So when I think about digital forensics, it's like, okay, you get your white gloves and you put it into something so the air dust doesn't get onto the platters of a hard drive, right? That's what, and then you have tools, right? We can get into some tools. So if those folks, obviously, there's like Try Hack Me, I think has some DFIR kinds of rooms, but when you think about digital forensics, we can think about like maybe a server. And now we have Patrick's email. He left. He has his PST file from an archive or something. I normally whack, if I'm leaving somewhere, I'm whacking it, I'm deleting it. So hopefully, maybe I just gave away my secret sauce. But, so there's nothing really to recover, right? If I'm leaving, I don't want no one to be going through my shit. But the point being is now we can take that PST file, that OST file, throw it into something like eDiscovery or InCase or not Autopsy. That's more for drives and stuff like that. But now, what is the point, or not what is the point? I guess more my question: who is this for? Do you think like for digital forensics, and then we'll get into the incident response aspect? Do you think that there's a lot of jobs in that sector, or is it more for like, okay, you're overseas, so like, is it like more for the police getting into like the law enforcement and stuff like that, or you think it's for the civilian sector as well?
Well, that's an interesting question. First of all, I'm gonna admit I'm more in the incident response thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people working in the digital forensics, especially, and I've
Mm-hmm.
done some of that in the past for other companies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you are right. Most of it is done from law enforcement. I have some colleagues who worked in there, some. Consultants even in the big tech companies or
Mm-hmm.
big four companies are coming from a law enforcement background, but
Mm-hmm.
I still see a lot of them working for how do you call it, insurance
Mm-hmm.
company, or also there are a lot of legal environments, legal companies who requires a lot of e-discovery, digital forensics technicians, and specialists
Mm-hmm.
to do all that. I feel like probably not the same amount of requests for people working in incident response, because cyber is really the a very big thing right now. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there could be a lot of opportunities as well, from my point of view.
Cool. Yeah, and I think so too. And I know people that work in hospitals. I know people that work in different sectors. Different areas, and they use tools like FTK, in case, like I said, autopsy, and they just have a whole bunch of boatload of tools that they're using for when they have a case, or you have to provide this to attorneys and stuff like that. So now we can turn into like the incident response, right? So what is incident response like in a nutshell? Like when someone says, "Oh, I work as an IR," or if I work as a cybersecurity engineer and I do incident response, what does that entail?
That's actually a tricky question for me, because I feel like there's not a lot of discussion about terminology
Mm-hmm.
regarding this stuff, because you see, and there are of course a lot of people working in SOCs,
Mm-hmm.
security operations centers. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them, when you talk to them, they say they do incident response, which could be true or could be not, because from my experience, and unfortunately, a lot of people in security operations centers mostly do, what we call triaging, right?
Yep.
Or just the detection part. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, we're talking about, you have a lot of alerts coming from your, depending on what kind of tool you're using, maybe a CM, maybe an EDR, XDR, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the people, especially the junior people, what they are doing is reviewing, alert by alert, and finding out what could be false positive and what could
Mm-hmm.
be a true positive that maybe they will then escalate to someone else. So the
Exactly.
thing is, this is the first part, triaging. Yeah, mostly I call it like that. But when you have a true positive, so when you confirm that you actually have a data breach, that you actually have a compromise in your environment, that's
Mm-hmm.
when supposedly you should start the incident response process. So how do you handle the incident itself? You want to find out how bad it is, right? So how many different hosts they compromised, how did they do it, how did they enter, with the first foothold, and eventually you want to make sure you identify everything so you can completely block the attacker and contain them and eventually eradicate them, so that
Mm-hmm.
you can start the business again if they stop
Yep.
anything.
So I have something to add to that. There's something that we have in this industry that are called playbooks. So
Right.
to go on what you're saying, we follow something. God forbid we get compromised. We follow some kind of playbook in order for us. That's why we do something called tabletops. So tabletops are a just in case, or a God forbid, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But like now, like if it is getting breached, there's been incidents, like someone's calling and pretending, and it's super easy because everyone puts stuff. I want to give you a real life example, and obviously I'm not going to disclose my anything about it, but there was an incident someplace that I know that someone called this organization pretending to be the CFO because he followed the CFO on Instagram. He found them on Instagram, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. And this CFO for this organization posted something that he was in Aruba. He was on vacation. So now, if I call that organization, say, "Hey, I'm Steve Bell, and I need to get my Okta or my MFA reset, blah blah blah. I need to get into the organization. It's urgent." You're the CFO, right? So if the help desk, service desk don't really have a real way to validate that, like in a panic, obviously there's ways to validate that. We can say, okay, like we can send you an authentication token. We can send you, okay, like we use Okta. What's your Okta pins to, or we can do a video verification. There's many ways. There's tools out there to do that. But in the like right there on the moment, right? We're like, oh fuck, we gotta get the CFO his thing because he needs to pay something or whatever, or our whole operation is going to get shut off. So, long behold, this person, which they do, which called SIM spoofing. So I can clone, I can pretend you give me your phone number, I can pretend I'm your phone number, right? We can do SIM spoofing, and this happened to this individual and the service desk. It's sort of what happened with the MGM hack, right? Similar, but this was interesting because there was someone that actually I know, and when that happened, I was like, holy shit, like that's interesting. So the moral of that story is like when we get these incidents, we can think about all the technologies, MDR, and you said EDRs, MDRs, XDRs, SIM tools, blah blah blah. But we, the human, are the cause of a lot of these attacks. So, that's why I love social engineering, doing those kind of engagements, because, it's simple when they answer the phone, because I've been on engagements that don't fucking answer the phone and you can't do nothing. But yeah, so that's interesting. So I'll shut up now. I guess we're too talked.
Well,
we're both big
no,
mouths.
that was interesting, and actually I have something to add to that. I mean, once again, most of the time we are in the industry, especially in blue team, kind of roles. We are used to getting alerts from our CMs or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, actually, there are other and more ways to start an investigation. Maybe because some kind of employees called up to help desk or IT, or if you have a security team, which is good already, something odd happened. It could be the case of I think you can call that business email. No, it's not an email compromise, the one that you described, but anyway, if something like that happens and the employee is the only one who knows about it in that moment, that's the only way you can get the first alert, the first indication that something weird is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also have some kind of external partner, or maybe entity like a law enforcement reaching out to your company and saying, we discovered that something has happened to your accounts, or you have some agencies that can reach out to you. Something similar happened very recently with one of the shutdowns of one of the major botnets out there.
Mm-hmm.
They reached out to a lot of companies saying to all of them, oh, we found out that your own accounts with your domains were compromised, so you should do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all of these different inputs, but
Mm-hmm.
no matter what kind of inputs you have, it's an employee who called up, it's law enforcement, or it's an alert on your CM. Eventually, it should everything be treated like an incident, and the same process should be applied. I think
Hmm.
that's an interesting point that is not discussed very often.
Yeah, no, totally, and it's not. So what is the so now so now we can take a step back about getting into blue teaming or incident response or security engineering. So I'm maybe an intern somewhere that I don't know if I want to go red team, blue team, or just like whatever reverse engineer, whatever aspect of excuse me, whatever aspect of security, right? Why should someone choose blue teaming over any other entity? Like, what is so sexy and hot about blue teaming?
Okay, I have let's say an interesting idea, but I'm weird. I feel like, no matter how you call yourself, we are all trying. The final goal is always to try to defend the company, or just the data, or the systems, the infrastructure, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, we like to call it red team versus blue team, because on one side you try to simulate or to emulate the attackers into the
Hmm.
part of the attacker, but eventually you will need also to provide suggestions in order to patch those vulnerabilities and everything.
Yeah, remediation.
So
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. Well, if we call it blue team, and if we talk about incident response specifically, the reason why you should decide for that, from my point of view, it's the investigation process, right?
Hmm.
For me specifically, the reason why I decided to do this was because when I well, just maybe I'll quickly mention that before doing cybersecurity, I was a system admin, right? So I was
Hmm.
in IT. I was responsible for an entire networking infrastructure. I had a bunch of websites we were hosting for our clients. Okay, and I was responsible for it, which means that it was a small company. I was the only guy for everything, and when someone breached one of our websites, it was all on me, right? It was personal. Okay, so it was very stressful, but at the same time, I found out that the process of understanding how do they, uh, they were successful in breaching my own website, right?
Hmm.
Finding out and reconstructing, what happened in the past, because that's
Hmm.
the thing. Looking at a computer, or any kind of device, you have a lot of data that if you are good in interpreting that data, you can literally read the past and understand what happened before.
Hmm.
And I found that to be amazing as a as an aspect. It is, of course, technical. It's a lot of computer stuff, but at the same time it's a lot of pure investigation thing. It's like those shows that you watch on TV, and you
Hmm.
have your private investigator, but it's with computers, which was a pretty good thing at the time. And that's why I did my research, and I find out, this is actually a job. Some people do that every day, 8 hours per day, and so on and so forth. Maybe even more than that. So I think that should be the reason. If you don't like that idea, maybe it's not for you, because it can be a
Hmm.
very stressful role as well.
Yes.
If you're doing only incident response, maybe as a it can be either a consultant mostly,
Mm.
or you are like the top tier of a team inside a corporation. And the thing is that most of the time you're going to try to resolve that incident, and if until you don't do that, it's a mess, right?
Hmm.
It's all on you. And depending on how big is the incident, it can be very stressful. You have a lot of people watching on you, and expecting from you to resolve everything, and to get back to the normal business as usual.
Yep.
So if you don't enjoy the process, it's a lot of stress, and maybe it's not really worth to focus on that specific path, because we have a lot of different roles in the company. So I think you should do your own research, and you should at least start with okay, this is a good idea. It seems that I could like it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And if anyone has any questions during this, throw it in the chat and we'll get to it in about 25 minutes. But yeah, I think the same thing. And I have the same exact background as you. I come from the system admin, network engineer, system, whatever you want to call it. And I, tinkered with, because if you think about it, just like you said, right? If you're a sysadmin today, you're semi doing some blue team stuff without even realizing you're doing it, And I didn't notice that until I actually got into it, because back when I got into it, it was SCP, semantic endpoint protection, which it was, signature based, right? Now it's, anomaly based for everything, and EDR and all that shit. But now, like, getting into the world of cyber, coming from, that's what I wanted to ask you now. Having that system admin background, getting your website hacked, was that the turning point? I'm assuming, but I just want to clarify. That was like, oh shit, like I want to do this, and is that what like fancied you? Like, oh shit, like this is what really got the spark into the world of security, because you got your website hacked?
So if I can expand a little bit the answer to your question, I would say 3 major shifts in my career, right? The first thing was, even before starting to work, I wanted to work with computers. I didn't know anything about it, right? But I know the only thing I could do it maybe is working with computers. So I knew about programmers, developers. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do that. That was the original idea. Never did that at any point. But I then started as a system admin, because I found out after doing some research that actually it was more interesting for me to have a high level, view on an entire network, an entire infrastructure, and not only maybe a single application you are developing. So that was the first shift. Then I had what you said, right? I was responsible for a system. That system was hacked, and just the process of recovering that system and finding out where was the vulnerability, so I could patch it. I enjoyed that process so much that I started my researches, and it was right on time when they were applying the GDPR regulation here in Europe, which was a big drive for cybersecurity. So it was the right time to jump on that boat, let's say. So I started with cybersecurity because of that. But I was still not really aware of the various roles inside cybersecurity. I just randomly decided, okay, no, I want to do cybersecurity now. So I tried a bunch of stuff at the beginning, and then it's when I realized, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to work in cybersecurity. That's a big field. It's nice, but I want to see exactly where I am, what I'm good at, and what I really enjoy. And that's when I sort of did, let's say, a review of what I did in the past, what it was for me that made me move to cybersecurity. And then I realized, it was that investigation process. Is there a role that will provide me the possibility to do that most of the time?
Yeah.
And that was the last shift, let's say.
Yeah, and I love that story, because my story is similar, but mine was a PayPal hack, right? Like, I got my PayPal hacked into, and I didn't care about how to defend it or patch it and make sure it doesn't happen again. I wanted to do that, right? That's what really fancied my thing. Like, oh shit, like, this guy robbed $800, whatever it was back then. How can I put a site up, or how can I get an email out? And back then it was like, use an email relay to do some spam. Now, you have SPF records and DMARC and DCAMs and blah, blah, blah. But back then you didn't really have any of that. You just, if they knew your email, especially with like MSN Messenger and all this shit. So when I got my PayPal hacked, I was like, okay, this is what intrigued me to get into the world of cyber, but I wanted to learn more on the offensive side. Like, okay, like how can we do this? But you made a good point when you said, even if you're a pen tester, if you're a red team or whatever offensive person, at the end of the day, yeah, you're doing all this hack and sacking and all this shit, but you're performing, you're presenting a report with remediations, right? And it always got me, right? Because it always got me, and I always ask myself, and I don't think I've asked anyone else this. I always ask myself, and I asked myself this when I just passed the PJPT too, because you hack into this organization and blah blah blah, and you write a pretty report and remediations on your findings. And it's like, why do we have to do that if we're not going in to patch them, right? And it's like I know I use the analogy, you have to think like a thief to catch the thief or whatever, but it's like we give these remediations, but do we even know how to remediate? And if we did, why aren't we doing that? Like, I don't know. In my head, it makes sense. Like, and you're gonna ask yourself, why do you have to do that? You're a pen tester. You don't have to remediate. That's not your job. So then, if it's not my job to remediate, why is it my job to provide that remediation if I'm not even doing the remediation? Right.
But that's the final goal, right? That's
Yeah,
the reason why you're doing the pen testing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I guess in my head, maybe when I'm speaking it, it just maybe it conveys different than what scrambles in my head, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. And I don't know if anyone else ever thought about that, but I think about these cuckoo things in my head, and it's like, it is what it is. But yeah. So have you done any offensive work, like tinkering around with Hack the Box or anything?
Well, I did some for, let's say, personal study, right? Just to get better at what they do. They, like you said, to defend from attackers, you have to think like an attacker. So you have to know how they operate. So not for work. I will not say I ever did it as as an engagement, like I was paid for it, but I did it like studying a bunch of stuff. Well, I was, it's not really red teaming or anything like that, but for a couple of years I was involved in vulnerability management, which is kind of in the middle, right? So you're not really doing anything of it yourself. You're mostly using tools, but the thing is, you're really involved a lot with the vulnerabilities and prioritizing them, understanding what to do with them, what to patch first, how to patch a lot of them, or how to scan an entire infrastructure to find out about those vulnerabilities. So yeah, I would say 90% of it I always have been in blue team mostly.
Nice. And that's where it makes sense, when the remediation, right? When you're on a VM team, right? On a vulnerability management team, that, okay, let's use that hospital as an example, right? Like, because, we have a SOC team, we have a VM team, we have a, architecture engineering team, we have all these different teams. But, the vulnerability management team, if it's Rapid7, Qualys, Nessus, or whatever, we are taking those vulnerabilities. We're making projects out of that. We're making, we're prioritizing those, and we send those to the sysadmin team, the network engineering, to patch whatever needs to be patched. That makes more sense for understanding and conveying remediation, right? But in my head, still till today, like as a pen tester, just in my head, it just doesn't make sense. But you just have to put it on the report anyway, because if you find, or like a null session, if you find whatever W digest, or you find weak passwords, oh, don't put your password, whatever it is, right? So now we'll get more back into the DFIR stuff and careers and stuff like that, or tools. Let's talk about tools and techniques. So if I want to get into this field, or whatever, however you got into the field, or what you're using today, what are the essential tools that I need to learn to be in incident response?
So I feel like of course we call it incident response, but there's a lot of different stuff you can do, and the tools will depend on what specific aspect of incident response you want to specialize. It could be that you are going to do maybe all of them, But most of the time, in my experience, you really specialize on one specific thing. What I'm talking about is, first of all, there are people specialized in just doing incident response on the Windows systems, right? And we're talking about, endpoint security, basically. So you need to understand how Windows works, and with all of the different versions. And then you have another split into two different things, because you can do disk forensics on a Windows machine, meaning that you're going to collect everything that is written on the hard disk or SSD or whatever, and starting to analyze all of the artifacts that Windows write. And on the other end, you could actually collect the data on the RAM memory, which is a totally different thing. There are people just doing memory analysis and memory forensics. Once again, you can do both, but there are tools to collect and analyze disk data, and tools to collect and analyze memory data. There are a lot of them. Yeah.
So when you say, I just want to add some stuff just in case some people don't get it. So for the memory, right? You can do, like you said, like memory dumps, and there's something called volatile data. That's what is in, right? So, or non-volatile data, or stuff like that in USB drives, hard drives, like you said, and all that good stuff.
So I suppose I can take a step back. The thing is, with incident response, we are trying to, once again, reconstruct what happened, right? And to do that, we need data that is mostly written by the systems themselves. Okay, systems, whenever you do anything with them, they leave artifacts. They write, logs and other kind of tracks that you can, once again, collect, analyze, and interpret to understand each steps that a specific user maybe did. And those data could be written most of the time. Well, I will say 3, maybe 4 different places. If we talk about a single system as well, a single computer, you have everything written on the disk, which is non-volatile. So everything that is on the disk, it's there no matter what. It could just change, but unless you go and try to wipe it on purpose, it's gonna be there. So if you, let's say, take a computer and it's shut down, you can still collect all the data and analyze them. Maybe it could be encrypted, but there are ways to unencrypt them, or maybe you just have the password, so you don't even need to do it yourself. On the other hand, you have a lot of data that is not on the disk, but it could be on the RAM, so random access memory, I think it's the acronym, which contains volatile data. What that means that it's there until the computer is on.
Reboot.
So until the computer is operating, it's doing stuff. But if you shut down the computer, all of the data is completely wiped. So it's not gonna be there. So there's only one way most of the time to do it. That's whenever the computer is still on, it's still live, you go in there and take a snapshot, you take a dump of the memory, so that once you collected it, you can analyze that. And of course, the data structure is completely different. There's a lot of other studies that you need to do. I will say it's a little more complicated than doing this forensics. But yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, I always think that stuff is interesting, and people, I like to talk about that stuff, because what we all think about when we get into cybersecurity, or at least into the blue teaming, is what you said earlier, right? You look at logs, and you're just looking at a SIM tool, and you're looking at EDR, and some stuff like that. So it's like, okay, now I just go remediate and click a button and it deletes a file, blah 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 blah. Like, but this is the interesting stuff, and this is stuff that I like to talk about, but I don't have many people to talk about it with. So because I really enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks for shooting the shit for an hour. Yeah, like I did, digital forensics for 2.5 years, and I worked for an MSP, but like when I did my CHFI, I was interested in that, and like they had a lot of their a lot of their clients, a lot of their customers were law firms. So if they get, cases, from whatever e-discovery cases or forensics cases, and understanding the chain of custody and put it in a bag and doing all the stuff, like go to court. Like I used to enjoy that. And then that MSP sold, and I had to part ways.
Oh,
But yeah, this was what, 10 plus years ago now. And that's when I was still a system engineer, and I just messed with the forensic stuff because it was super super intriguing. And yeah, taking snapshots and doing what you were saying, and just like, and I remember when it was just like, you can format your computer and you still have your Windows, Windows dot old. I don't know,
yeah.
yeah, people like, oh, I formatted my machine. And I remember, like, and I would do it, obviously I'm not going to go write zeros to a drive if I'm formatting my friend's computer and helping them, right? I'm just going to, delete the partition and fucking reinstall Windows and do it in 30 minutes. And here goes your machine back. Don't go on Pornhub again. But, so, like that was always the real, fun stuff. And then once, there's not, at least I don't look for jobs in that area anymore, but, obviously overseas over there, like, how is the job market with forensics? Like, we were talking about, like, it's, law enforcement, everything like that, but do you think there's a lot of jobs, like, if people are interested in it?
So I would say there are fewer jobs if you compare to the other roles, or
Mm-hmm.
let's say the more junior roles, or the more let's say fancy ones. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
of course, they are, the market is looking for a lot more pen testers, and there are a lot more people that want to be a pen tester. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's a little less demand and offer for that market. So there
Mm-hmm.
are fewer people who are really, really a lot specialized, a lot, very vertical in some things. So as I said before, some people are very, into memory forensics for Windows. Some people maybe we're starting in the last few years to talk a lot more about Linux forensics, which
Mm-hmm.
was not really a big thing, let's say 10 years ago. Right now it actually is, because you have you started to have the first ransomwares for Linux systems some years ago, so it actually became a big thing. So yeah, it's I feel like it's something more, it's coming later in your career. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that you start your job and you directly go into digital forensics. I mean, I know people that they start like this, maybe in law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
or something like that,
Exactly.
because if you are a computer technician in law enforcement, it's very very easy, let's say, to start with that. But if you are in a big corporate,
Yeah.
either in consulting or in a SOC, you're going to be the very last tier, and it's gonna take a lot of years of experience most of the time, or you're just very good, or just very good, and you're jumping that part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when people ask me what should I do to enter the FIR, I always say look for a path that will end up there, right? I did general IT. I did a sysadmin thing, which I believe it's very very important and very in preparation for that eventually. Then
Mm-hmm.
I jumped to cybersecurity, and then eventually I got into the FIR. Some people, and I feel nowadays most of the people do the SOC career, so they start in a SOC tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and eventually go into the incident response. Digital forensics, it's maybe another story. Either start with law enforcement, or low agencies as well,
Mm-hmm.
are a big thing, or insurance as well. Maybe that could be. I feel like if you want to start early, there's more chance you do some digital forensics. Maybe not the entire case yourself, but you can support another examiner in
Mm-hmm.
the process and still being involved in it. on the other end, if you're in a SOC, you're going to look at a lot of alerts before you you take your first dump of a memory or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I truly believe that. And there's obviously, my questions over here. So, and then we'll start getting to questions if there is any, because obviously I know it's super late by you, and I want to respect that time and try to get you off
That's
to bed.
okay. That's
So,
okay.
so from your perspective, what are some of the common challenges faced inside of an incident response or DFIR? So, what do you think like the common challenges are?
Well, I think the challenge, like the biggest challenge of all, it's there's too much to know, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, once again, most of the time you have companies who know a person who knows everything, who does everything, which it's kind of a unicorn, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be like that, but most of the time it's like that, because if you start to study the Windows internals to get to digital forensics, so you start to know how Windows works, like in the very low level part of it, and then it changes every new version or
Mm-hmm.
every
From the kernel.
major
Yep.
release, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's already a lot to know, and there you discover memory forensics. It's completely different, and you have to start studying from scratch, and then you start with Linux and all of the different distribution of Linux that have something slightly different compared to each other. And then I didn't mention it before, but there were, I think, at least two other places where you look into for your investigations, which is a network. There's an entire network forensics, let's say, field where you are more into looking at network packets. Maybe you have your Zik, let's say,
Yep.
formatted data, metadata, or maybe you have something like NetFlow.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of similar concept, but you are mostly looking into communications between different systems instead of artifacts being written by the operating systems.
Yep.
And the final part, which is probably the messiest one, it's the cloud. There's something we call cloud forensics, which is basically looking at logs that are written by cloud environments, and then you have Azure, you have AWS, you have GCP, you have, I don't know, all of the other slightly smaller
The
cloud
private cloud.
providers.
Yep.
But every one of these is an entire life of studying, and every month there's something new for each of these pillars, for each of these silos. So
Mm-hmm.
there's too much to study, and I think you in your career you have to push a little bit against the companies to make them understand, I want to study them all, but it's just not feasible. So I can be a very specialized examiner, specialized analyst
Mm-hmm.
for this thing specifically, but I cannot do them all. Even
Yep.
well, the last thing I want to mention is, let's say that you just specialize in Windows. Still, you can have a lot of different ways you do it. Most big companies nowadays are really using EDRs to run incident response and digital forensics, because they are just too let's say too easy, or just too handy to be
Convenient.
used for
Yeah.
this. Yeah, convenient,
Yeah.
because you have already that agent installed in I don't know, thousands of different hosts.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you are in a consulting firm. It means that you have no standard EDR, so you need to understand, I don't know, CrowdStrike and Microsoft Defender and Sentinel-1 and whatever they're using, your clients are using in their environments. So
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. It's crazy what how much things you have to know.
Yeah, and that's something I think about in pen testing, right? Like when people say I want to become a pen tester, and it's like, where do you want to pen test? What do you want to pen test? And that's
What
what
kind
like,
of pen tester?
yeah, what kind of pen test do you want to be? And that's what sometimes like it's a struggle getting into the field, because people, especially now, if you see jobs like you use the word unicorn, they expect you to be a unicorn. it's like, I remember when I started sysadmin, like you have DBAs, you have the network guys, you have your sysadmin that did just server stuff, you have your firewall people, you have this person. Now it's like, you have to know it all. And I don't think that's really, unless you're like some super genius and super power man, like Superman.
Yeah, it's just not sustainable, if you ask me.
Exactly.
Maybe you can
Exactly.
do it in your 20s, and then at some point,
Yeah.
it's too much.
Exactly. And that's what, like, getting into the field, and like, even when people come to me, I want to become a pen tester and I want to learn, this, that, and the other. And I always say, like, what sparks your interest? Like, for an example, I just said, I just made a video recently on like what I'm using and how I'm getting more into web app testing. I shied away from it because I never enjoyed it. I never really, that was not something I was interested in, right? Because I came from this traditional, like you did, Windows, network, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, oh, I enjoy searching stuff on the internet. I enjoy OSINT. I enjoy going out and breaking things and doing from the external in or internal stuff and network type stuff. And that's why, like, everything that contained, like social engineering, phishing, vishing, all that stuff is really Wi-Fi pen testing, because that goes with, networking stuff. And now it's like, when you get onto the AppSec side, it's like, oh man, we get, you get a job, or you get, like, you apply for a job. It's like, oh, pen tester, right? Like the job is like, oh, senior pen tester or pen tester or whatever, associate pen tester, whatever they call it. And you go into the thing and it's like, you have to be a network pen tester, a web app, this, that. It's like, in my head, and if anyone watching, if they, agree to disagree or whatever, put it in the comments, because even if it's after the fact, I want to know your feedback. Because what do you think is, I don't want to say what do you think is fair, but like, what do you think is right? Like, do you think if you're a pen tester, you should know how to pen test APIs? You should know how to pen test cars. You should know how to pen test airplanes and networks and this, that, and the other. Like, that's what I just get a little annoyed with when, people ask me and they're like, oh, I'm going to apply for this job. And I'm like, oh, like, let's check it out. Let me see how I can prep you for that position. And it's like, oh shit, they want you to be some fucking super god. I don't know. Good
Yeah,
luck. But
I feel they just don't understand it, right? Because either they just don't have the budget and pretend they can ask for everything for one single guy until someone actually applies for it and pretend to knows everything.
yeah.
But most of the time it's just someone is writing those job descriptions who don't really know what they're talking about, because
Yeah.
that's not really a thing. I mean, once again, you have a small company, you can't have 10 different people doing 10 different things. I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you don't really ask for every skill set, ever. You just ask for someone who is willing to learn a lot of different stuff. Okay,
Exactly. Yep.
that's
Yeah.
cool. But at the same time, if you are a big corporate, I'm expecting you to have a team where at least one person is specialized in everything. We didn't even mention mobile devices or
Exactly.
IoT or even operational technology. That's a totally
Yep.
different thing. I don't know anything about it, right? But I know
Yeah.
it's a big deal, and there are companies doing just that
Yep.
for
Like medical device hacking. Um, yeah. So that's, and I think that's super critical. And for those folks that are looking to get more into the offensive side and pen testing, and in my opinion, this is just me now. Like, since I'm navigating the web app stuff and like tinkering with that stuff, I think the two most important areas is like network external, network pen testing and web app. Those are where like a lot of people are needed, and that's a lot because every company has a site. Every site is on the internet. It's an application. So it's like, that's where I'm starting to realize, like, okay, this is really needed. And so I guess those two can go hand in hand. But like, when it gets into like, I looked at one with a friend the other day. I'm like, dude, that's like some unicorn, and they're paying like 110 US. I'm like, who the fuck's gonna do that? You know what I mean? Like, good luck. Unless
I mean,
someone's
there are some people, but I feel like there are not as many as they, as the market wants.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Exactly. So I guess I don't. I didn't see many questions tonight. So we have about 10 more minutes left. So let me just look. Hey, what's up, y'all? Hello. Digital forensics in class was really sick. Yeah, I enjoyed digital forensics too. Maybe I should start making some videos on it. Maybe that would be cool.
Yeah,
But
that's cool.
it's a little difficult because it's like you need an enclosure. You need to hook it up to a machine. You have to get the application. Maybe I'll figure something out. Let me maybe that's something I can tinker with,
Yeah,
bring
I
back
feel
my.
like that's the other thing maybe we didn't mention. It's kind of hard to learn by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like I have met a lot of self-made pen testers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's fairly easy to get a lab and a vulnerable application and start messing around with it,
Mm-hmm.
like the very first steps. But when it comes to, maybe digital forensics, let's say digital forensics, you can take the dump of your own computer and start
Mm-hmm.
analyzing it to see if you can reconstruct your own actions. And
Mm-hmm.
that's fine, that's fair. But that's the big difference with the incident response. Usually you're not analyzing a single computer, you're really analyzing thousands of hosts inside a network,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing comparable with that. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
could have something, I don't know, on the learning platforms which give you some simulated data or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But still, if you're looking for the first steps, it's kind of crazy. And also, well, now there are some courses, at least. When I actually started, there was nothing for blue team. Everyone was doing pen testing, and if you wanted to be blue team, you have you had to figure it out yourself, which was the
Mm-hmm.
reason why it came pretty handy that I was in system administration before.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it was crazy. There was nothing really teaching you. Maybe I did a couple of sans courses, but most of them are too expensive for most of the people, and I understand that it's mostly um, their target are companies, not really
Yep.
individual people. But those were the only providers providing something for incident response or investigations in general. I feel like probably nowadays there's something more if you look into it. I'm not really updated with that, but you can find something which is kind of cheap or just affordable.
Yep.
And probably there's no such thing in my country, but I feel like there are some university courses, some something that they are also teaching some digital forensics, which is very cool. I would have enjoyed that if I had that
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah. I think the closest, at least from what I remember, is, hands on. I think like analyzing stuff is like the blue team level 1 and blue team level 2. I think they have some stuff from their organization. I think it's. Let me just Google it real quick. I think it's just blue team level 1. I think. Uh,
Yeah, I feel like I tried that once, and there was a lot of everything, which is nice if you're starting out. But once again, if we talk about specializing in one thing,
mhm.
one chapter of a few hours course, it's not going to be enough, in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the blue team, and it's 400 pounds, and it seems to be pretty. You have your
That's fair.
junior, yeah, your advanced, and then your security operations manager. So if, from what I see in here, and you know, they trained some CrowdStrike, Deloitte, some other big U.S. Air Force, blah blah blah.
Oh, you know what? That's as I said, nowadays it's mostly all around EDRs, so you
Mm-hmm.
definitely have to know something about it. I feel like Microsoft is giving out their courses for free on their
Yep.
platform, which is great. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to be, let's say, vendor locked in, like
Yep.
a platform and you don't know anything else. But it's a very good start, especially if it's free, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's one of the major three providers in the market. So if you know something about that, you're already at a good point as a, let's say, marketability.
Hmm.
That's a very good let's say suggestion I will give.
Yeah, and you could start with like Defender and then Microsoft Sentinel, and just start there. You can get some of the exposure. And I'm not sure. Like I tried to do like the development program like about a month ago, and I wasn't able to sign up. So I don't know if they stopped doing that to get like the free. Uh,
Uh,
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's still there and still free. I was doing something a few weeks ago. I don't know if all of it for sure, but
Gotcha.
for the fence part, for teaching their own tools, they want to sell it.
Yeah.
So if they have people who know their technology, they're gonna sell the technology. So
Yep.
it's sort of thing on their plan.
Cool. So Monster Gaming. Should a hacker have it? I'll put this. Oh, I'm looking at this. Oh, oh,
I
all
mean,
right,
it's
you do
kind
it.
of already there, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So should a hacker have information of every field, or the hacker should have specialized in one field? I'll let you answer it first, and I'll give it my input.
So well, I feel like, how do you call it, the T-shape skill set. I like that. I mean, at the start of your career, I feel like, especially if you're looking at your first job, I feel like it's good to know a little bit of everything, right? Because first of all, you're building the base. Everything could be useful for sure. It's just not feasible to know it all, right?
Hmm.
So my point is, at the start of your career, the first years, you try to know a lot of everything. But at some point, if you want to be, if you want to excel, and if you want to be more, let's say, if you just want to ask more to companies in order to be paid more, uh, you should definitely at some point specialize in one single pillar. It's kind of a pyramid. You decide, let's say, red team or blue team, or maybe GRC if you're interested in that. Then you look, okay, what's available in blue team? There's this. Okay, maybe I'll find that out. And at every step, at every few years, you find out a niche that is even smaller than before. You
Hmm.
have to be careful, because of course if you choose the wrong ones, and that kind of, I don't know, technology disappears in few years, then you need to pivot to something else. Let's say I don't know, you specialized in Windows Phone digital forensics. That's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe bad idea. But mobile devices, maybe you're into mobile forensics or mobile penetration testing. That's a thing. You should
Mm.
not start with that, but eventually, if you got, if you're known in the market, if you're known in the industry to be very good at this specific thing, usually it's preferable. But it's depends on your own let's say preferences.
Yeah. And I guess my answer for that, should a hacker have more information about one? So yeah, I totally agree, and I'll go on from what you said. It's something like me, for an example. I can use me as an example. When I started, maybe I don't give myself enough credit when I say I don't know web apps, because I guess I do. Like I always say I don't, but then like when I'm doing like something and it entails like a PHP upload, or like getting into for an example, like if I found some credentials and it's running on an Nginx server or something like that, and I was able to get, you actually compromise the web server, right? Um, so it's like when I think about web app, I think maybe more about the code, and that's why I'm like, fuck that, I don't want that. So maybe I have to reevaluate that. But that thought process, I'm just thinking about it now. But I think specializing definitely is the way to go. That, like you said, like touch, maybe that's why I love like the platforms like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me's, etc. Because it's like, okay, there's actually paths. You say, okay, I can touch web apps, I can touch IoT, I could touch all these other mobile devices and whatever, network pen testing and all this other stuff. That's why I think people should get more into Wi-Fi pen testing, because it's really fun, but it's really hard to simulate Wi-Fi, and that's why there's not a lot of certifications on that. There's only the OSWP from OffSec, which is whatever, they have their stuff, but it's really hard to really like simulate when you're sitting at home. How are you gonna, use your alpha card or whatever to broadcast, because you're going to be broadcasting locally, right? So the point of that, saying that, is like you have to understand what you're trying to specialize and what it entails of what you're trying to specialize. So like I said, Wi-Fi, maybe you have to do your own little lab at home, but you can watch someone that's doing it from their house and stuff like that. So I think, overall, I think specializing would be ideal, because at least I'm getting older. I don't want to, I want to learn less and less shit as I get older, but that's just me. But I know we're at the top of the hour, and there's no questions. And if they want to connect with you, is there, if you want to throw some links, throw your channel in the chat, we can get that out there. If you want to throw it in the here, throw your channel, and we could put it in the chats. They can subscribe and check out your podcasts, and
Sure.
however they want to connect with you and reach out to you if they have any questions
Well,
about.
for me directly, mostly I just use LinkedIn. So you're free to go to search me on LinkedIn, Giorgio Perticone. I can actually send you my profile right here. And once again, I do my little podcast. But just wrote the link in the chat, which is Security Break. I invite a lot of cool people, Pat included. If you want to join again, you're more than welcome. And we discussed about the latest news on the security field, whatever happens in there, and we try to understand them all together, which I feel is the most interesting part, right? We are learning, discussing about the news, and we are also hopefully helping the people watching the podcast to learn together with us. That's pretty much all, really. I would like to give you my LinkedIn, but it take too much possibly, so that's fine. Just look for me. I'll be there.
Yeah, and I think you're on the. I think I have your info in the stream as well. So yeah, definitely connect with him. I want to say thank you so much. We'll get some sleep. I know it's 2 a.m. over there. So good night, and good night to everyone else that tuned in tonight. Thank you so much, and see you guys on the flip side. Much love.
Thank you very much.